Hello students, in this class we are going to discuss the most important chapter, first chapter of your book Flamingo, the last lesson. So this chapter is by Alphonse Daudet. He was a French novelist and a short story writer. So the last lesson, this work is his major work, most significant work, because this work shows the background of a war. That war was a Franco-Prussian war. So the last lesson is set in the days of a Franco-Prussian war, and Franco-Prussian war that was fought in 1870 to 71 between Prussia and France. Okay, so what was the aftermath of this war? So the end result of this war was that Germans, they captured the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine, and because of this, people, they were confused, they were in chaos, and France was defeated by Prussia, led by Bismarck, and Prussia then consisted of what now are the nations of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. So again, in this story, the French districts of Alsace and Lorraine have passed into Prussian hands. It means Prussia will occupy their space and they will impose whatever they want to. Okay, so let's just take an example. What do you do if someone is trying to steal your own stuff? What kind of reaction you will give? So exactly what happened to French people when Prussians, they were ready to impose their culture, their language, everything on French people. So Alphonse Daudet, he wants to emphasize that we should always be loyal and proud of our country and mother tongue. And also he added that importance of learning your own language. So this chapter is one of them where he explained the importance of mother tongue, importance of your own identity, your culture, your language. Okay, so students, let's get started. I started for school very late that morning. I was in great dread of scolding. I is the main protagonist, the narrator of this story. So he was late for school that morning and he was in a great dread of scolding. Great dread of means fear of scolding, especially because Monsieur Hamel had said that he would question us on participle. So Monsieur means M. Hamel, M exactly like Mr. So Monsieur Mr. की तरह ही होता है French language में. So M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles and I didn't know the first word about them. So the main protagonist of this story, he didn't know the first word about participles. For a moment I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. So he decided to avoid school. He decided to enjoy the nature beauty, outside beauty. And it was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods and in the open field back of the sawmill. Sawmill means place where logs are sawn into planks. It means a factory for cutting wood. The Prussian soldiers were drilling. So the birds were chirping at the edge of the woods. It shows that even the animals, they were independent. They were free. And on the other hand, Prussian soldiers were drilling. Drilling means marching, exercising. So Prussian soldiers, it shows that they were not actually free. They were not free from the hands of Prussia. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles. But I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. So resist means to stop something. So at the end he decided that he will go. Okay. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all bad news had come from there. It means bulletin board exactly like your school notice board. So कोई भी important information news होती थी तो वो bulletin board पर ही pasted होती थी. So for the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. Whether it was lost battle, the draft, the order of the commanding officer. And I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? Because that place was crowded, crowd in front of the bulletin board. So he was in a thought that What can be the matter now? अब क्या हो सकता है? अब कौन सी bad news? What news could have been put up at the board? अब कौन सी न्यूज़ वहाँ पर मेंशन होंगी? Then, as I hurried by as fast as I could go, the blacksmith watcher who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin called after me, "Don't go so fast, bub. You will get to your school in plenty of time." So, watcher is exactly like a watchman with his apprentice, and they were reading the bulletin, called after me, and these people, they were saying to friends, it means main protagonist, that don't go so fast, bub. You will get to your school in plenty of time. So bub basically, we say this to a man or a boy, but in an aggressive way. Okay, so you will get to your school in plenty of time. बहुत time है, अब तुम आराम से जा सकते हो. Now I thought he was making fun of me. So friends, he was thinking that these people, they were making fun of him because he was already late for school, and reached M. Hamill's little garden all out of breath. All out of breath means gasping for air. You know, भागते भागते सांस फूल गई थी उसकी. And now M. Hamill's little garden all out of breath. Usually when school began, there was a great bustle. So there was a great bustle. Bustle means noise, busy way, which could be heard out in the street. So वो street से ही सुनाई देता था. The opening and closing of desk, lessons repeated in unison. You know, unison means all together. A very loud, with our hands over our ears to understand better. And the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. It was still, it looks like that day was a Sunday. ऐसा लग रहा था जैसे Sunday का day है. So everything, it seemed so still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. Already in their places, and I am Hamill walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. How I blushed. Blush means face turned red in color due to shame. So he was ashamed. Ashamed of what? Ashamed of being late, and feared a scolding as he had to enter the classroom in front of everyone. Okay, so वो बहुत डरा हुआ था. Friends, बहुत डरा हुआ था. Ashamed था because he was late. वो late था. But nothing happened. M. Hamill saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little friends. We were beginning without you." So I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap, all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize distribution day. So a little over my fright, it means when he became comfortable. So he noticed that his teacher had worn his best embroidered that day. So friends wondered that it was a normal day. आज तो एक normal day ही है, तो क्यों M. Hamill ने इतना प्राइज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन डे या इंस्पेक्शन डे में जो वो ड्रेस वेयर अप करते हैं, आज क्यों उन्होंने वो वेयर किया है. Now, besides, the whole school seemed too strange, so strange and solemn. Solemn means, very serious. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty. Back benches जो हमेशा खाली होते थे. The village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hauser with his three-corned hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others besides. Everybody looked sad, and Hauser had brought an old primer. Thumbed at the edges. अपना टूल लेके आए थे. Thumbed at the edges, it means वो बहुत टाइम तक यूज़ कर रहे थे, तो वो एजेस से थोड़ा बहुत जो था वो थम्ड हो चुका था. थम्ड का मतलब होता है, इट मीन्स कि यूज़ करते 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 वो चीज़ कैसी हो चुकी है, बहुत रफ सी हो चुकी है. Now he held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. While I was wondering about it all, M. Hamill mounted his chair, and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me, said, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. and the new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson, and I want to be very attentive. I want you to be very attentive. So it looks like that M. Hamel, he was torn from inside, because it looks like that M. Hamel was torn from inside, and friends was confused, और वो फिगर आउट नहीं कर पा रहा था कि सब कुछ इतना अजीब सा क्यों हो रहा है. मतलब सब कुछ शांत है, एंड बैक बेंचेस जो हमेशा एम्प्टी रहते थे एट विलेजेस, वहाँ पर बैठे हुए हैं. सो ही वॉज कन्फ्यूज एंड couldn't figure out what was happening that day. So just then M. Hamel told them that it was their last lesson in French, as the Prussians in Berlin had ordered that French language would no longer be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine, and German language be taught instead. अब German से पढ़ाई जाएगी, and German teacher would arrive the next day, and this was the last lesson in French. He wanted them to pay attention. So that's why he said, I want you to be very attentive. Okay. What a thunderclap these words were to me. So thunderclap, it was like a shocking news. Thunderclap is like sound of a thunder. So but it's a comparison. It looks like unexpected thing. So ये friends के लिए unexpected था. So friends was shocked to know that he couldn't learn French language any longer, and now he knew the latest news that had been put up at the bulletin board of the town hall. So अब उसको थोड़ा realize हो रहा था कि bulletin board पर इतना crowded क्यों बन चुका था वो area, because यही news थी जो bulletin board पे pasted थी, that he couldn't learn French language, and the order had come from Berlin. Oh, the wretches, that was what they had put up at the town hall. So now friends were shocked to know that he could not learn French any longer, and now he knew the latest news that had been put up at the bulletin board of the town hall. My last French lesson, why I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn any more. I must stop there then. Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Sa. Sa is the river. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints, were old friends now that I couldn't give up. And M. Hamel too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget all about his ruler and how cranky he was. So these lines, these words shows that friends regretted for not being serious. पूरा टाइम वो कभी सीरियस नहीं होता था, अपनी बुक्स अपने बैग्स को वो एक बर्डन समझता था. So now he regretted for not being serious towards studies and for wasting his time in hunting birds' eggs and playing near the river. So it seems that now he was heartbroken. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry. So it was like जो उसे burden लगता था, अब वो उसको उन सब चीज़ों की importance पता चल रही है. So friends considered his books to be an unwanted burden, and suddenly he realized that his best friends whom he could never leave, he starts consider them to be his best friend. अब वो books उसकी best friend उसको लगने लगी हैं. Writer wants to show, here Alphonse Daudet, he wants to show how friends attitude shifted, कैसे उसका attitude shift हो गया एकदम से जब उसे ये news पता चली. And poor man, it was in honor of this lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. So this news that their teacher, M. Hamel was leaving, also had a similar impact on him कि अब books भी नहीं है, language भी नहीं है, teacher भी नहीं है, तो एक similar impact पड़ा है friends पर. Now friends didn't want him to go away, नहीं चाहता था कि वो चले जाएं. He no longer thought the teacher to be short-tempered and strict, कि उसके teacher एक cranky थे. इससे पहले उसे लगता था teacher एक cranky person है, short-tempered person है, strict है, and now he ignored everything. अब वो सारी चीज़ें ignore कर रहा है. Poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes, and now I understood why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room. कि क्यों अब villagers जो हैं वो back benches जो empty होती थी वहाँ पर सब बैठे हुए हैं. It was because they were sorry, क्योंकि वो भी सॉरी फील कर रहे हैं, वो भी रिग्रेट फील कर रहे हैं that they had not gone to school more. It was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service and of showing their respect for the country that was theirs no more. So अब ये ट्रिब्यूट है, एक रिस्पेक्ट है जो वो उनके टीचर को दे रहे हैं और अपनी कंट्री के लिए दे रहे हैं. So village men had come to the class, they were also repenting for not have studied well in their childhood, कि वो बचपन में खुद तो नहीं पढ़े बट यहाँ पर आए हैं एक ट्रिब्यूट देने. They had come to thank their teacher for his 40 years of service, okay, a teacher of a French language, and they wanted to show respect to their country. अपनी country को, अपनी mother tongue के लिए वो sorry feel कर रहे हैं. Were sad as their mother tongue, French would no longer be taught to them. उन्हें नहीं पढ़ाई जाएगी, अब French language उनसे छीन ली जाएगी. So exactly, what kind of reaction you will give if someone wants to steal your stuff, your identity, your mother tongue. Exactly that's what French people were thinking. अब ये उनकी सेम वही चीज़ उनके साथ हो रही थी कि उनकी लैंग्वेज, उनकी आइडेंटिटी उनसे छीन ली गई थी. And Prussians, they were ready to impose their language, their culture, everything on them. Okay, while I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called, and it was my turn to recite. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through, very loud and clear and without one mistake? But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there, holding on to my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. He was ashamed of himself and didn't have the courage to face his teacher. So he was ashamed कि इससे पहले उसने कभी importance नहीं दी, और आज जब उसकी टर्न है अपनी लैंग्वेज के कुछ वर्ड्स बोलने की या रिसाइट करने की, so he can't do anything. वो कुछ नहीं कर सकता. नहीं था towards learning. He tell the class that the enemies, it means Prussians, they would laugh at them, उन पर हंसेंगे और कहेंगे कि तुम फ्रेंचमैन हो और तुम्हें अपनी ही लैंग्वेज नहीं आती. Say that they only show to be a Frenchman as they can neither speak nor write their own language. He says that friends should not feel guilty as everyone is at fault. ये वर्ड्स उन्होंने सिर्फ फ्रेंड्स के लिए नहीं बोले थे, ये वर्ड्स उन्होंने हर एक पर्सन के लिए बोले थे जिन्होंने अपनी ही मदर टंग को इम्पॉर्टेंस नहीं दी थी. ओके, सो इवन ही ब्लेम्ड हिमसेल्फ, अपने आप को भी उन्होंने ब्लेम किया है. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills so as to have a little more money. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? Then from one thing to another, M. Hemmel went on to talk of the French language. Again, he was blaming that M. Hemmel says that French parents were not interested in getting him educated. वो नहीं चाहते थे कि वो पढ़े, वो मिल्स में काम करे या फैक्ट्री में काम करे और कुछ मनी अर्न करे. Okay, so his parents wanted him to work at a farm or a mill and earn some money. So he says that as a teacher, he was also not interested in teaching them. क्योंकि उन्होंने अपने आप को भी ब्लेम किया है. He would send them to his home to water the plants. Sometime he would declare a holiday and go for fishing. ओके, सो यहाँ पर उन्होंने दोनों ही रीजंस दिए हैं, दोनों ही पर्सपेक्टिव से समझाया है कि पेरेंट्स भी इक्वली ब्लेम किया जाता है उन पर और टीचर पर भी. To another, M. Hemmel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it, because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. M. Hemmel praises his mother tongue, अपनी mother tongue French language को वो praise कर रहे हैं. The most beautiful language, clearest and the most logical language है in this world. एंड ही टेल्स द क्लास टू गार्ड देयर लैंग्वेज, अपनी लैंग्वेज को बचाओ, बिकॉज लैंग्वेज ही आपकी आइडेंटिटी है, एज इट इज़ द ओनली वे टू फ्री वन सेल्फ फ्रॉम द प्रिजन ऑफ स्लेवरी. स्लेवरी से बचने का एक ही सोर्स है, पहले आप अपनी लैंग्वेज को प्रोटेक्ट करो. इफ़ अ पर्सन नोज हिज मदर टंग वेल, नो वन कैन एनस्लेव हिम. कोई भी एनस्लेव नहीं कर सकता अगर आपको अपनी मदर टंग, अपना कल्चर पता है. Knowing the mother tongue well as a language is a tool to fight domination. एक domination से या dominant rule से fight करने का best way है अपनी mother language को, अपनी mother tongue को समझना. Knowing the mother tongue well. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy. You know, ये जो चैप्टर जो ग्रामर लेसन पढ़ा रहे थे फ्रेंड्स एम हेमिल, सो फ्रेंड्स को वो इतना इजी लग रहा था बिकॉज वो अटेंशन दे रहे थे और इससे पहले कभी उन्होंने इम्पोर्टेंस ही नहीं दी, पढ़ने में कोई इंटरेस्ट ही नहीं था. सो ही ओपनड अ ग्रामर एंड रीड अस आवर लेसन. आई वाज अमेज्ड टू सी हाउ वेल आई अंडरस्टूड इट. ऑल ही सेड सीम्ड सो ईजी. आई थिंक टू दैट आई हैड नेवर लिसन्ड सो केयरफुली and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew before going away and to put it all into our heads at one stroke. So it looks like कि M. Hamill explained the lesson with a lot of patience. अभी उन्होंने बहुत patience से वो चीज़ समझाई है. And friends felt that the teacher wanted to give them all the knowledge he had before leaving. अपनी जाने से पहले जितना उनको French language की knowledge है वो सब कुछ देना चाहते हैं बच्चों को. So after grammar they had a lesson in writing. Grammar के बाद writing का lesson आया. After the grammar we had a lesson in writing. That day M. Hamill had a new copies for us. You know, new copies भी लाए थे वो. Written in a beautiful round hand, France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They look like little flags floating everywhere. So these words, these flags, they were floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the road at the top of our desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Once some beetles flew in, but nobody paid any attention because everyone was fixed. सबकी eyes fixed थी books पर, blackboard पर. Okay, so who worked right on a tracing their fish hooks as if that was a French too. On the roof, the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German? Even the pigeons. There was an air of patriotism in the class. You know, France, Alsace, France, Alsace. So ऐसा लग रहा था patriotism की air mixed up हो चुकी है classroom में. And notebooks were like flags of France that were floating all round. And the entire class was busy writing, and the only sound that he could heard was that of the pen writing on the paper. You know, scratching sound उन्हें सुनाई दे रही थी. So once some mosquito flew into the class. एक beetle आया, but no one panicked. किसी ने उस पर ध्यान ही नहीं दिया. Everyone was busy writing. The writer considered the pigeon, you know, pigeon sitting on the roof of the class to be students as well. You know, pigeons भी बैठे हैं. Even animals उनको अपना tribute उन्हें pay कर रहे हैं, respect pay कर रहे हैं. So even pigeons were busy scratching the roofs with their claws. वो लिख नहीं सकते, but अपने claws, अपने पंजों से वो scratch कर रहे हैं, वो show कर रहे हैं. And it seemed that they were also busy writing the task of French language. That you know, वो भी अपनी फ्रेंच लैंग्वेज को इम्पोर्टेंस दे रहे हैं. इवन यहाँ पर एनिमल का एग्जाम्पल भी अल्फोंस डॉडे ने मेंशन किया है. एंड फ्रेंड्स वाज थिंकिंग, विल दे मेक देम सिंग इन जर्मन? इवन द पिजन्स, क्या पिजन्स को भी, अब हमसे तो हमारी मदर टंग छीन ली गई है, तो क्या एनिमल्स, बर्ड्स, इन सबको भी वो अपनी ही लैंग्वेज में यू नो मिक्सड अप कर लेंगे? सो this line, on the roof the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? So it's natural. So Alphonse Daudet, he wants to say that language comes naturally, natural है to a being, and it cannot be forced upon anyone. आप किसी को force नहीं कर सकते हो कि आपको हमारी language सीखनी है. So be it the pigeons or the Frenchmen, चाहे वो animal हो, चाहे वो कोई Frenchman ही क्यों ना हो, तो आप बेसिकली उस पर फोर्सफुली इम्पोज नहीं कर सकते हैं किसी भी चीज़ को. सो लैंग्वेज कम्स नेचुरली. सो दैट इज़ वाई ही वॉज सेइंग दैट विल दे मेक देम सिंग इन जर्मन इवन द pigeons. Okay, so whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hemmel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing. Gazing means looking. Gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy. For 40 years he had been there in the same place with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him. Okay, so in between, writing when everybody was busy, friends looked at M. Hemmel and who was motionless, staring at the different thing in the classroom and wanted to memorize the appearance of everything before leaving. So he wants to capture everything, हर एक चीज़ को वो अपने माइंड में रखना चाहते थे बिकॉज नेक्स्ट डे उनको इस प्लेस को छोड़ के चले जाना था. So only the desks and benches had been worn smooth, the walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hopvine, it's like a creeper that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof. So he wants to capture each and everything of that place. वो हर एक प्लेस की हर एक चीज़ को वो कैप्चर करना चाहते थे. The only changes were that the desk जो थे उनके क्लासरूम के had worn out due to use over the years. इतने पुराने डेस्क हो चुके थे. The walnut trees in the garden outside had grown taller. The hopvine on the outer wall of the school building had climbed up on the roof. So, because it's been 40 years, he was serving there. So, अब उनको suddenly order की वजह से जाना पड़ेगा और सब कुछ. जस्ट अबव ही उनका रूम था जहाँ पर उनकी एम हेमल की सिस्टर पैकिंग कर रही थी. But he had the courage to hear every lesson in the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history, and the babies chanted their ba, bee, bee, boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hauser had put on his spectacles and holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that he too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. How well I remember it, that the last lesson. So, after writing, there was a lesson of history. जहाँ पर phonetics, words थे, sounds of alphabets थे. So, friends refer to the class as the babies. कि babies एक छोटे बच्चे की तरह सारे वो sounds of alphabets बोल रहे हैं. Phonetics. तो usually done by younger children. So he called himself as his class to be babies. तभी यहाँ पर word babies use किया गया है. So Hauser had put on his spectacles, अपने spectacles उन्होंने लगाए, and holding his primer in both his hands, recited the letter with the class. He was crying, his voice trembling, and friends had a mixed feeling. He found it funny to see how an old man like Hauser was crying and trembling, and also felt emotional like Hauser did. सब वो पूरा ही एटमॉस्फेयर सराउंडिंग बिल्कुल इमोशनल वाली हो चुकी थी. एंड फ्रेंड्स कुड नेवर फॉरगेट दैट दिस वाज हिज लास्ट लेसन, कि ये उसका लास्ट लेसन है. All at once the church clock struck 12. Then the sounded under our windows. M. Hemmel stood up very pale in his chair, and I never saw him look so tall. Angelus means prayer song. तो यूजुअली चर्च में होती है. सो द स्टार्ट इज़ मार्क बाय द रिंगिंग ऑफ द बेल एंड देन फिर वो प्रेयर जो है वो स्टार्ट होती है. सो जस्ट देन द क्लॉक एट द चर्च स्ट्रक 12 एंड द प्रेयर सॉन्ग बिगिन. वो प्रेयर सॉन्ग जो था वो स्टार्ट हो चुका था. एंड ट्रम्पेट साउंड जो उन्हें सुनाई दे रही थी उनके विंडो से. और एम हेमल जो थे उनका फेस पेल हो चुका था. एंड फ्रेंड्स नेवर सॉ हिम लुक सो टॉल. वो कभी इतने बड़े दिखे ही नहीं उन्हें. माई फ्रेंड सेड ही आई बट समथिंग चोक्ड हिम. ही कुडंट गो ऑन. सो वो उस चीज़ को एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर पाए. देन ही टर्न टू द ब्लैक बोर्ड, टुक अ पीस ऑफ चॉक एंड bearing on with all his might, school is dismissed, you may go. When M. Himmel began to speak, but he couldn't continue, something choked him because he was overpowered by his emotions. वो बहुत ज़्यादा emotions दिख रहे थे. He took a piece of chalk and wrote Vive la France, means long live France, on the blackboard as large as he could. And then he stopped. He stopped writing, leaned his head against the wall, and without a word he made a gesture, and he was saying that school is dismissed, you may go. So these words, these last words from MML's mouth, it looks like he was heartbroken. And now the themes of this story. So first, most prominent theme of this story is language chauvinism. Language chauvinism or linguistic chauvinism. See, the natives of Alsace, they realize their folly. Folly means their mistakes. So they realize their mistakes of not giving due importance to the study of French, in their school days. And now they became victims of linguistic chauvinism. अब उन्हें realize हो रहा है अपनी language की importance, because इससे पहले उन्होंने कभी भी अपनी language को importance नहीं दी. Parents ने कभी importance नहीं समझा पढ़ाई को, and even teacher M. Hemmel, he blamed himself कि जब उनका मन नहीं करता तो वो कभी holiday दे देते थे students को. So language chauvinism is the most prominent theme of this story, right? Second is brutality of war. All this thing happened because of war, because of the consequences of that Prussian-Franco war, right? So the brutality of war, which makes men insensitive. War की वजह से ही तो वो insensitive हो गए थे towards human feelings and sentiments. कोई कैसे किसी की language को बोल सकता है कि अब आप अपनी लैंग्वेज छोड़ के हमारी लैंग्वेज सीखोगे. सो व्हाट प्रशियंस डिड, ये सारी चीज़ें प्रशियंस ने करी थी. सो दैट इज़ द ब्रूटैलिटी ऑफ वॉर. एवरीथिंग सीम्स opposite of what they planned, what they hope, their aspiration. All these things were ended. Now third is significance of education. Value of education is another important theme of this story. Friends realized that how important is to learn the language, how important is to learn everything in French language. Even men from the village who never took their education seriously have come to sit on Hemmel's lesson. कभी जब उन्होंने इम्पोर्टेंस ही नहीं दी और आज जब लास्ट डे है इसके बाद वो नहीं सीखेंगे, तो अब आए हैं वो इम्पोर्टेंस दे रहे हैं, ट्रिब्यूट पे कर रहे हैं. Even men from the village never took their education seriously have come to sit on M. Hemmel's lessons. So it shows that इट्स लाइक प्रोक्रेस्टिनेशन. कभी उन्होंने इम्पोर्टेंस ही नहीं दिया, डिले ही करते रहे. तो अनदर थीम इज़ प्रोक्रेस्टिनेशन. प्रोक्रेस्टिनेशन मीन्स डिलेइंग. सो आज नहीं, हम कल सीख लेंगे, बहुत टाइम है. सो इट्स अ ह्यूमन टेंडेंसी. सो Alphonse Daudet highlights the human tendency to postpone learning. कि आज नहीं कल सीख लेंगे. Learning things for one feels there is a plenty of time to do so. कि बहुत टाइम है, हम कर लेंगे बाद में. And now their plan, their hopes, their aspirations were all ended. अब सब कुछ ख़त्म हो गया क्योंकि सडनली बर्लिन से ऑर्डर आया एंड अब उन्हें जर्मन सीखनी है. फ्रेंच लैंग्वेज जो उनकी खुद की मदर टंग है वो अब उन्हें नहीं सिखाई जाएंगी. सो स्टूडेंट्स, दीज आर द मेजर थीम ऑफ दिस स्टोरी, जिसके अराउंड ये पूरी ही स्टोरी क्रिएट करी गई है, बनाई गई है, जिससे आपको ऑथर जो है वो बताना चाहते हैं कि किसी भी कंट्री पर्सन के लिए उसकी लैंग्वेज, उसकी कल्चर, उसकी आइडेंटिटी कितनी ज़्यादा इम्पॉर्टेंट होती है. So if you like this content, do subscribe our channel and don't forget to like this video. Thank you.